In 1986, Frank Miller and David Mazzuchelli would team up to produce what many consider the best, myself included, Daredevil story ever made, and that's Born Again. The series started with issue number 227 and lasted 7 issues. At that time, it caught some comic book readers off guard. This was not going to be the same kind of Daredevil story we had seen before. Frank Miller's original run in Daredevil is legendary, and he started with penciling in issue number 156, but he would graduate to co-plotting and then eventually taking on the full writing duties with issue number 168, which was also the introduction of Elektra. He ended his initial run with number 191 in early 1983 before going to DC Comics and doing some pretty memorable work there as well. After 3 years, he would return to Daredevil and essentially blow up Matt Murdock's world. Let's jump right in and talk about what makes this story so epic and so memorable and relevant for comic book readers today. What's immediate when you first start reading this story is that this one is not for the kids. I was a teenager when this came out, and this did not feel like the average comic book superhero story. There's a grittiness and seriousness to the story right from the start. You're reintroduced to Karen Page, a former girlfriend and fiancée of Matt Murdock, and she's a broken woman. She's a failed movie actress, turned into a junkie, and to feed her drug habit, she's selling his secret identity. Karen Page has a long history with Matt Murdock and Daredevil, going all the way back to the first issue. She would have a serious relationship with Matt Murdock, so serious that Matt Murdock would reveal to her his secret identity in issue number 57. And this was a big deal in comic books back then, as it wasn't very common for a superhero to reveal their secret identity to anyone. Their on-again, off-again relationship would hit the wall in issue number 86, with their engagement off, and with Karen leaving for the West Coast to pursue a movie career. That would end as badly as it could for her, as she would end up in Mexico, and to feed her drug addiction, she would sell his identity to a local drug pusher. Enter the Kingpin. The Kingpin, aka Wilson Fisk, originally appeared as a villain for Spider-Man, but ended up leaving New York for a while, and then coming back in Daredevil with issue number 170 and would set himself up as the chief crime lord of New York. The two would set up to be natural enemies in New York, both getting the better of each other at times. There's one particular memorable moment where Daredevil gets the better of Mr. Fisk, and that's when he finds his missing wife, Vanessa, who everyone thought was dead from an explosion. There's one sequence in issue number 180 where this is beautifully illustrated. The Kingpin had set up a puppet candidate to be mayor of New York, who was going to win, but when Daredevil finds the Kingpin's missing wife, the payment would be for the candidate to give up the mayor role. It's easy to say there is a lot of bad blood between the Kingpin and Daredevil. In Born Again, there's a great sequence where you just get to see how big the Kingpin's empire is and like the chain of command in terms of how the information of Daredevil's identity gets to the Kingpin. What follows in this issue is the complete and utter destruction of Matt Murdock's personal life. The cover of number 227 says Apocalypse, and this is exactly what happens to the world of Matt Murdock. Throughout this issue, as his personal life is being taken apart, he has no idea who is doing this to him until the end. The Kingpin had carefully planned the demise of Matt Murdock as well as tie up any loose ends, including anyone who was connected to Karen Page and the information she provided. Again, the rawness of this part just felt different for this time. There's one scene where you get to see just how unhinged Matt Murdock is when he's on the subway and he is confronted by these would-be muggers. He just completely takes them apart. And everyone, including a cop who comes onto the train, is a victim to his violence. You get to see the complete collapse of Matt Murdock. With no personal connections left in his life, Matt Murdock goes to confront Kingpin, with the Kingpin fully expecting him. The fight is brutal, and Kingpin beats him pretty badly. I have to say, in 1986, when these comic books came out, it felt like they bent the rules of the Comics Code Authority a little bit. There are a lot of scenes of violence which are, well, fairly normal, but other stuff like drug use, as well as these kind of adult situations, just seemed out of the norm of what the Comics Code Authority would allow. Although the Comics Code Authority had slowly been losing importance and becoming a lot looser over the years, I'm still surprised it let this content go at that time. Certainly now, nobody would even blink if this was published today. But in 1986, it was a different time. Daredevil, beaten, stabbed, and broken, would end up at a gym in Hell's Kitchen where he grew up and would be saved by his mother, a character who never really took part in the comic book series until now. You can say that this was divine intervention that saved Matt Murdock and the point where he was born again. Another important and prominent figure in this series is Ben Urich, a reporter for the Daily Bugle. Ben Urich is also another person who knows Daredevil's true identity, which he discovered in issue number 163. But knowing that Daredevil is a force for good, he keeps his identity a secret. A lot of this series is also focused on Ben, and his story is brilliantly done. I love the fact they used a different typeface for panels where Ben is in, as it separates his story and also enforces the journalism aspect of his character. As well, there are some great exchanges with him and J. Jonah Jameson, the publisher of the Daily Bugle. Jameson has always been characterized as someone you don't take very seriously, but Miller gives him a lot of weight and seriousness in these panels. To a lesser degree compared to Matt Murdock, Ben's character is also born again when he decides to go forward and pursue the Kingpin story, despite knowing the danger that will come to him and his family. There are some pretty shocking panels in this story, showing what Ben goes through to put this story together. The sequence where he is talking to Nick Manolis, a police officer who betrays Matt Murdock, is something else. Nick Manolis, who is a minor character, had appeared several times before in Daredevil comic books. He's an officer who is not corrupt, but bends to the Kingpin's will in an effort to save his own son. The last character I want to talk about in this series is Captain America, who quite honestly almost steals the show in the last couple issues. The Kingpin uses his influence and brings in Nuke, essentially an augmented soldier used by the US military for foreign operations. Nuke is used by the Kingpin to bring out Daredevil in Hell's Kitchen and destroy him. Nuke and his partner, a helicopter pilot, do an incredible amount of death and destruction in Daredevil's neighborhood, to the point where Daredevil does something shocking. He intentionally kills the pilot with Nuke's weapon. The only time I can think of where Daredevil does something remotely like this is to Bullseye, but even then he doesn't outright kill Bullseye. Captain America and the Avengers arrive at the scene to help control the situation and clean up the mess. There are some great panels here. Captain America decides on his own to investigate further to determine who Nuke is. He also figures out who Daredevil is, and asks him if he knows any more information about Nuke, and eventually tracks down information on Nuke's origin, which ends up being similar to his own. Nuke was created by the US military for military operations. Nuke was captured at this time and tries to escape and is confronted by Captain America. And I'll leave it there because I've said enough already and I don't want to spoil any more for those who have not read it yet. What's interesting about this series is that it was published as a trade paperback shortly after the series finished, and Marvel at this time had not published too many of these trade paperback formats, but they knew it was a hit. And it was a good way for readers to pick up the entire story without having to, look for back issues. As a comic book reader and collector, when you get attached to a series, it's nice to own the original issues. Even though I have the trade paperback and the original issues, I also picked up the artist edition as well because I like the series so much. Artist editions give you some more insight on the production of a comic book. And what's great about this artist edition is that it also includes some overlays, so you kind of get to see how the art production is done. David Mazzucchelli really started to come in on his own with this series. His earlier work in Daredevil was a lot more traditional in terms of style, and he credits his style to other greats who worked on Daredevil in the past, including Gene Colan. I cannot recommend this series highly enough. If you are a Daredevil fan, if you are a comic book fan, if you like the character, this is a must read. It holds up incredibly well for something that came out in 1986, which was also a wonderful period of time for comic books in general. I prefer the physical version, which I'm sure you can find on Amazon or other online retailers, but if you can find a copy at your local comic book store, all the better. If you are a collector of back issues, you might luck out finding some of these for a reasonable price. All in all, one of the finest comic book series ever produced, and one worthy of your comic book collection. Any additional thoughts? You can leave them in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, you might want to check out another one of my recommended reading videos over here. Until next time, read and enjoy your comic books.